Hello and welcome to this History Snapshot. Today we're going to take a quick look at how an undermanned, underarmed, underfunded, and ununited set of colonies managed to break away from the strongest military power in the world. In other words, how the heck did the Americans win the Revolutionary War? Part 1. The situation. On one hand, we have the British Empire, the largest, richest, and most military powerful force in the world. They had 50,000 standing troops at their command and were contracting with 30,000 German mercenaries, also called Hessian mercenaries at the time. British officers and soldiers were experienced, well supplied, and had a depth of recruits due to their larger population. On the other hand, we have the Americans, only 1/3 of which were in favor of independence. Americans relied solely on volunteers to fight, most of which were untrained. George Washington never had more than 20,000 men under his command the whole entire time. We had no naval forces and no way to move troops besides walking. The Continental Congress had no power to tax, so soldiers were fighting with no guarantee of getting paid, and Congress could not supply soldiers with arms, ammunition, uniforms, or food. Unsurprisingly, we lost most of the battles at the beginning of the war and suffered many casualties. Part 2. Gaining advantages. Americans were experienced in fighting with Native Americans, since American colonists often took their land and Native Americans were understandably upset about this. Therefore, most Americans owned guns and had some basic idea of how to use them in combat. However, this experience did not translate well to European styles of fighting, where two opposing forces lined up on opposite ends of a field and shot at each other until someone surrendered. When Americans changed their tactics to reflect a more guerrilla warfare style, using their superior knowledge of the terrain and knowledge gained from fighting both against and alongside Native Americans, American colonists began to win more battles. At the same time, the Continental Congress allied itself with the French, who provided experienced officers, arms, ammunition, and most importantly, a naval force. The two sides were now much more evenly matched. Perhaps most significantly, Americans were fighting for their own independence, their ideals, liberties, and freedoms. They were much more committed to the fight than British soldiers were, who were just there because they were getting paid. They also knew that instead of having to defeat the British, all they had to do was outlast them. The American colonies were a huge amount of territory that the British would have to subdue. We had no central seat of power, so instead of having to take over a capital, the British were kind of left to play whack-a-mole, crushing rebellions in Boston, then having to sail to South Carolina to fight there, then going to New York to fight a rebellion that popped up in the city, then back to Boston, etc. ad infinitum. In addition to this, the British were still in debt from the French and Indian War, and the Revolutionary War was quickly becoming more and more costly. This resulted in British citizens suffering under heavy taxes and beginning to cause unrest in Britain. It is very difficult to win a war without the support of your country. Part 3. What the heck we actually won. Faced with a growing series of disadvantages, the British surrendered at the Battle of Yorktown, and on September 3, 1783, Great Britain and the United States of America signed the Treaty of Paris, recognizing American independence. Great! We won! Now what?